Mr. Nate, you haven't answered the question. The fact is, today was Bharat Bandh. Nobody took responsibility for it. But out of 12 places, if there were protests, 8 were carried out by the Congress today.
But Preeti, I am saying it is our fundamental right to protest. I started off by saying that. I'm absolutely not shying away from the fact that yes, we will protest. To our dying breath, we will protest against the scheme because this jeopardizes the future of this country, the future of our youth. We denounce anything that's violent, but as far as the Gandhi and Satyagraha is concerned, we will continue to do it because we are custodians of that value. The RSS and the Sanghis will not know anything about it.
All right, Mr. Vadakan, I want to bring you back into this conversation. Sir, you made a very pertinent point taken, that the army needs to be infused with younger blood. Okay, fine. We take that point, Mr. Vadakan, but the question I want to ask you is, then wasn't this reform rushed? Because to defend it, we have generals who are well above the age of 50. The stakeholders in all of this were those who are under the age of 25. Some of them have, waited for years on to actually get into the army. Should they have not been somewhere down the line consulted? A consensus should have been built, a quorum should have been built, instead of handing them a reform and said, deal with it?
Preeti, I mentioned this earlier. 1989 is when this whole issue started. Then we had, you suffered certain problems in the Kargil. And the Subramanian Committee was set up. And it is part of that reform which was not have the nerve to implement it, because they felt a nerve of steel. And here's a Prime Minister who has a nerve of steel. He's talked to all the stakeholders, and you have the Indian Army, the Navy, the Air Force.
So who are the
stakeholders?
Coming
out and talking about it.
Who are the stakeholders here?
The defense personnel, the recruits are going to be stakeholders after they join. Before that, to call them stakeholders is irregular. Now, civil service, they mentioned 25% and less gets elected in the civil service. And what about the 75? Do they turn into extremists? Do they become Naxalites, or do they join the RSS? There is a point of competition. Yes, competition is there. And when competition is there, you get the best. Now, when you have the civil service examination, how many are finally
I'll come to you, ma'am. I'll come to you. Let him finish. Ma'am, let him finish. I'll come to you. Make your point. Make your point, Mr. Vadakan.
They talk about right to protest, but does right to protest means burning trains? Does it mean creating traffic jams, jamming the city, irregular situation in the in the capital and across the country? Is that protest? Is that the Gandhian Satyagraha? Go and learn what Satyagraha is. Before the state Gandhis talk about Satyagraha, I'm sorry, that's not Satyagraha. Satyagraha is working dialogue peace movement, not this kind of an activity.
So, Srinate, the fact is reforms need to be pushed. Nobody's ever ready for reforms. If you actually took in the stakeholders, the youth of this country, they would have never been on board.
But that's precisely my point. That who did you consult? Who did you consult on these reforms? You did not even choose to consult your own parliamentarians. There was no draft that was sent to the Parliamentary Standing Committee on Defence. What are these people for? These are elected representatives. They're supposed to represent the people. At least consult them before this. Who did you consult? That's the first point. And the second point that I want to ask is, today protests are very bad. Today blocking of roads is very bad. Jab aap vipaksh mein the, tab aap kya karte the? Were you not blocking roads?
Because
to voice the concerns of people is what opposition needs to do.
So let's go one by one. Sir, you wanted the privilege of uninterrupted speech. Accord her the same. Sir, accord the same privilege that you demand. Can I just get Ms. Srinate? I'll come to you, sir. Ms. Srinate, go ahead.
My simple point is that today do not denounce the same protest that you used to do, and rightly so. In a democracy, the opposition has every business to protest, just like the people have every business to voice their concerns. We are only saying there should be stakeholder consultations, there should be a wider consultation, a wider consensus made. You could have started this with a pilot project, because this is quite a groundbreaking thing that you're doing with the Indian Armed Forces. And one thing that I want to say is, yes, talk about making the armed forces young, but please do not dishonor the contribution our armed forces have made. These are the armed forces that divided Pakistan into two and gave birth to Bangladesh under Mrs. Gandhi. So please do not denounce them, because they are extreme men of valor and values. You are politicizing the armed forces.
Mr. Vadakan, the other question. Mr. Vadakan, sir.
You're putting army.
Okay, can we just go one by one? Mr. Vadakan, the other question that is being raised is, because you're pushing in Agnipath right now as a recruitment scheme, somewhere down the line, does the government admit that it made a blunder with one rank, one pension? You won an election on that, sir.
We have not made any blunder. This has been pending in Parliament and papers are there for everybody to see.
The reason
since 1989.
Agnipath is being ushered in is primarily, sir, to save pension. Everybody knows the truth.
No, that is only one part of the whole issue. This is basically, that is the diversion of narrative. The real narrative is we want younger blood. We want younger blood and we want the army to be fighting fit. A mean and lean army.
Sir, okay, sir, as a...
Because internationally, even
that's what you want younger blood for.
Mr. Vadakan, sir, I know, okay, sir, you know, sir, the fact is, you want a younger army, but, sir, it's an insult to those who've been serving and they've done a fabulous job, sir.
Stop this bunking of a younger army.
We want a better, this is for this country. This is not about
individuals. Sir, are we saying we are not a good army right now?
Are you going to say they are charitriheen, the armed forces? This is what Salman Khurshid, a very top leader of the Congress says. Charitriheen is what the word they use. And do you agree, Preeti, on this? That the armed forces are charitriheen? They are the basis on which we are alive today.
Sir, to say, and I'll bring in Supriya Srinath back into this conversation, you know, my only submission, Mr. Vadakan, is that you want a better army, a fitter, younger army, is an insult to those who've been serving in the army for their 15-year tenure, Rajavan.
This is not an insult. Preeti, this is not an insult.
Okay.
This is a better improvement of the Indian army. We respect our elders. We don't call them
Supriya Srinath, the government wants a better, younger-looking army. What's the problem in that? They are defending us. They are defending our borders. If we want to upgrade a system which is working very well, what's wrong?
So you want young people for 4 years and then you discard them, and these are poor, disgruntled, frustrated souls, trained armed forces. What do they go to do? You want younger army at the cost of what? I can turn around and say, why are there so many old spokespersons in the BJP? Don't start sending young blood. Are experience counts? Something that you say counts. You telling me that the armed forces are a completely redundant lot today. That's the first thing I would want to make. And the second thing I want to make, who's talking about a younger army? An ex-army chief, General V K Singh, now with the BJP, who went to Supreme Court to defend 1 year of